FastAPI, and Flask. It's like Clash of Giants, but which one you should learn in 2024? Let's have a look. They both have some similarities and some advantages over the other. They both are web frameworks for Python. There are various web frameworks for Python, but these two stand out the most. Flask was released in 2011, but FastAPI is relatively new. It was initially released in 2019. Flask is by Palettes Projects and FastAPI is by Tiangolo. First, let's get to know more about Flask. Flask is also called a micro web framework because it does not require particular tools or libraries and aims to keep the core simple but extensible. It only provides the necessary components needed for development, such as routing, request handling, etc. It is very easy to get started with the Flask application, so it's great for beginners too. It can be used for both simple and complex applications. The Flask framework helps Flask developers build websites, e-commerce stores. It is also used to deploy machine learning models easily and conveniently. It is employed by leading companies like Netflix, Reddit, and Mozilla. Now, let's talk about FastAPI. FastAPI is described as a modern and high-performance web framework for developing APIs with Python 3.6+. True to its name, FastAPI is fast. It offers high performance on par with Node.js and Go. It is used by top companies like Netflix and Uber to build their applications. First, Flask is a micro framework, while FastAPI is a full-stack framework. Second, FastAPI is designed for building API, while Flask can be used for building web applications and API. Third, FastAPI is faster than Flask due to its asynchronous code and type annotations. Fourth, FastAPI has automatic data validation and documentation, while Flask requires manual validation and documentation. Fifth, Flask has a larger community and ecosystem than FastAPI, but FastAPI community is growing rapidly. Sixth, Flask uses WSGI Web Application Framework, also known as Web Server Gateway Interface, whereas the FastAPI uses SGI Server, which is known as Asynchronous Server Gateway Interface, provided by Uvicore. Seventh, Flask error messages are displayed in HTML pages, whereas FastAPI error messages are displayed in JSON format. Let's have a look on all the differences in a tabular format. First, let's see two different HTTP methods, get and post, by these two frameworks. In Flask, you need to give the HTTP methods in the methods array, whereas in FastAPI you can create different route for different HTTP method. Now let's see about data validation. In Flask there is no data validation, but in FastAPI there is a built-in data validation feature. Let's talk about error message display technique. Used by these two frameworks, Flask displays the error message in HTML pages, whereas FastAPI displays error message in JSON format. Now let's talk about asynchronous task support feature. In these two framework, in Flask there is no built-in async programming feature, but you can always import it by async.io, whereas in FastAPI it's one of the key feature. Now the main difference between two of them is the performance. So let's have a look on it. As we know, Flask uses WSGI server, and FastAPI uses a SGI server. And because of async programming, it uses multi-threads, and that's why it is way more faster than the Flask. Now let's talk about documentation support by these two frameworks. In Flask you need to create the documentation manually, but in FastAPI the documentation is generated automatically. Now let's see the community support by these two frameworks. The Flask has bigger and rich community, whereas the FastAPI has smaller but more active community than Flask, although the community of FastAPI is rapidly growing. Now let's understand them better individually. So give the first opportunity to the Flask. First of all, let's talk about pros of using Flask. First, Flask is easy to learn and has many third-party libraries. Is a good choice for projects that require advanced functionality. It needs a small codebase that is easier to understand too. Second, Flask will ensure that you don't have any global variables in your application, as it gives every request its namespace. It helps you keep track of where objects belong. It also makes debugging easier and lets you find what you need when you're writing code. Third, Flask doesn't limit the way you work with it. It does provide a list of tools that you can use for all your requirements. However, if you want to perform something other than what is already there, you can do so. Now let's talk about the cons of Flask. First, the Flask framework is complex when compared to FastAPI. This can be a problem for those who don't have the time to learn it, or for those who don't have the necessary knowledge to perform certain functions. This also includes people who have not worked with Python in the past. Second, compared to FastAPI, Flask is less well documented. There aren't many guides that detail each of its features. This is a hindrance as every version comes with new features, like private methods that give you more power over your application. Third, the Flask framework is quick but not as quick as the FastAPI framework. This makes it a good choice when you want to build a small website that doesn't need to be fast, but not for projects that require speed. Here is the tabular summary of all the points. Have a quick look on it. We hope you understood about the Flask. Now let's see what are the pros of FastAPI. First, FastAPI focuses on reliability, security, and simplicity. It is designed to build API easily and in no time. FastAPI claims that it doesn't need any knowledge of programming, which means that even non-programmers can use it. Second, FastAPI provides many features, including HTTP requests, authentication using OAuth, XML, JSON responses, SSL, TLS encryption, etc. It is managed through a web interface that allows you to customize your account settings according to the API behavior. Third, the built-in monitoring tools can be used to monitor API usage. It provides alerts when you reach any critical thresholds, like response timestamp expirations and request count limits. Fourth, the FastAPI framework is used to build API that depend on Flask. It is an extension of the web application framework that provides features you would expect from Flask but with additional functionality. Fifth, FastAPI is recommended when you want to use a toolkit-based approach, rather than building the whole application from scratch or using many boilerplate generators online. It borrows ideas from other libraries. This means that if you are familiar with other related libraries or frameworks, you will easily be able to learn and adapt to the FastAPI framework. Now let's understand the cons of FastAPI. First, the major disadvantage of the FastAPI framework is that it is expensive. This does vary according to the country you use it in and how many API calls you make each month. Overall, though the cost is high, second, it can be difficult to scale your project. When you're looking to scale from scratch to something bigger like an application or website, you will have trouble if your code is in PHP or uses MySQL or PostgreSQL. It is easier if you use FastAPI with Python. But this is not the framework of choice for long-term scalability. Here is the tabular summary of all the points. Have a quick look on it. I hope you were able to understand about FastAPI better. Now let's see framework usage difference. FastAPI is a full-stack framework that offers everything you need to build your API. On the other hand, Flask is a micro-framework that doesn't provide all the features that FastAPI does. However, Flask is useful when you want to prototype an idea quickly or build a simple web application. The major difference between FastAPI and Flask is in how they are used. While the Flask framework is for prototyping new applications and ideas, the FastAPI framework is for building API. It offers various options for building a backend server quickly, without the need for coding experience. For small-scale websites and web applications, FastAPI is easy to learn, is lightweight, and can be used to build small-scale websites and applications. It comes with an object relational mapping ORM layer that handles data objects in the application so that you can access them quickly through coding. DORM layer helps keep track of all your databases so that you don't need to worry about how to update them manually when new information is included, modify, or deleted in the website or application. For machine learning models, FastAPI is used to build modern web API. It is built using Flask so you can use the code to create scalable and fast RESTful API and machine learning models. It has many features that make it a great choice for ML models. First, extensible plugins that allow you to add new features without having to alter the core code. Second, support for many libraries, including TensorFlow, Keras, and newbie. Third, flexible architecture that allows you to easily customize your API and even build your modules from scratch. Now, when to use Flask? First, to develop web applications. Second, to develop quick prototypes. And when to use FastAPI? First, to develop API from scratch. Second, to lower the number of bugs and errors in code. Let's move ahead towards conclusion. So let's find out which framework wins. On the one hand, we have the very popular Flask framework. And on the other we have the FastAPI framework, which has won the hearts of users thanks to its many built-in functionalities. While both these Python frameworks are simple and easy to use, FastAPI has the edge as it compensates for Flask's limitations. FastAPI data validation feature is helpful in developing and debugging code that interacts with an API. The inbuilt documentation support listed with all the endpoints is the cherry on top. Its runtime performance is superior too. It also takes less time to write code, has fewer bugs, and has many more features, as we've discussed. Based on these factors, adopting the FastAPI framework for your next REST project is the smart option. Of course, depends on your use case, but you might want to give FastAPI a try. Here is the bonus fun fact for you. Now we know the FastAPI is faster than Flask, but exactly how much fast? Well, the FastAPI is almost 2 times faster than Flask and almost 8 times faster than Django. Hope you liked the video. For more tech videos like this, subscribe the channel. Please like, share and comment the video. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.